Hello everyone and welcome on board the Sunrise Safari here on Djuma and Arathusa private game reserves in the Sabi Sands. My name is Scott and I'm teamed up with Jean-Dre this morning on camera. It's a crisp morning here in the Sabi Sands. It's about 9 degrees Celsius, 49 degrees Fahrenheit, and it hasn't been this cold for quite some time now, so nice to have a crisp, cold morning and looking forward to the adventures that lie ahead. Now, thanks very much to those of you who sent through updates from the Djuma Live waterhole camera, and that was from Lynn in Michigan and from Siberia Zumi. Lynn said she could hear a leopard rasping at about 6:15, and Jamie's headed straight into that area. She's following up. I think she's also heard some Inyala alarm calling, and we also got an update from the Siberia Zumi saying that they've heard some hyena whooping. And that's a great update. Thanks very much for those. They really do help us. And we've come out to the hyena den, into the area of the hyena den to try and work out why they are vocalizing. So I am going to take you a little bit closer to them. They're actually not at the den, I don't think. There may be some there, but we have seen other members behind us, not far from the den side, walking down this road. So let's go and have a look at them. We've got Nikki and Tara in the final control room this morning. And if it's your first time joining, a very, very warm welcome. And just to let you know, this is a live safari, so it's unscripted. We don't know what's going to happen at any moment, and it's a live feed you're getting. And we would really appreciate any of your comments or questions sent through to us, and that way we can interact with you. And you can hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or send an email through to questions@wildearth.tv. The hyena are just up ahead of us now. They are moving off down the road ever so slightly. And it looks like a few youngsters. Oh no, they're all running off. There's 3 of them, they've just disappeared. That's no good. We may get another visual of them. I'm surprised they all did run off. They usually don't mind the vehicles too much. But maybe they're all a little bit worked up with one another. And like I said, they did look like they were youngsters. So they may be feeling a little bit less at ease being away from the den. Okay, well, because these ones have run off, I think we should head back to the... There's Jean-Dre spotted them. There's one in there. Well done, Jean-Dre. As you can see, it's incredibly thick, but you can notice a little bit of movement. Let's give it a moment or two here and see if they come back out onto the road. There we go. You can tell that it's a youngster, even though we can't see it very well. It's got clearly black spots. Oh, there's another one. As they become older, those spots will fade to a degree, and their coat will also become slightly less furry. We can't see very clearly, but they are really greeting one another and rubbing up against one another there. Ah, perfect. So what a great start to the morning. Sometimes when we come into the area of the hyena den that is not active, and we're probably only about a couple of 100 meters away from the termite mound that has burrows excavated in it, and it looks like this one's coming right up to us to say good morning. This is awesome. It's coming right up to the vehicle. This looks like one of the medium-aged cubs. There's 2 twins, you could say, and it's coming right up to us. The slightly larger one's just behind it. And this gives you a good idea of how close it is to us. Here comes the other one that I just let you know about. This one I think is the oldest of the cubs at this den. And aren't we so fortunate to have animals that are so relaxed with our presence? I'm not sure where the other one has gone, Jean-Andre. Is it? Oh, there it is. It was so close to us we couldn't see it. Wonderful. It's been really great watching these cubs grow up. When we started broadcasting in November, they were tiny little black fur balls, no difference to the youngest cub that is at the den at the moment. And it looks like this one may anal paste on this piece of grass here. Let's watch closely. Oh no. And here is the third. So this is all three of the slightly older cubs. To me now, it actually looks like, I'm actually battling to tell who's who here, but the biggest one does have a little scar on its back leg. And I think the two now that we can see are the twins. And this one is chewing on some buffalo dung. That is not a breakfast that I would like to have, but I guess for a young hyena, it may acquire a few minerals and nutrients from buffalo dung, and I have actually seen leopard and lion licking and chewing buffalo dung in the past. This is great. Look at how quick it can go. Well, to give you an idea of age, they were probably born around October or November last year, just before we started broadcasting. And now you can see the little scar in the older individual's leg, on his back right leg. I said his, but it may not necessarily be a male. It actually is more likely to be a female. But we can't be sure. It's very difficult to sex hyena. They've both got very similar looking genitalia. And back to the buffalo dung, it appears. Now, my plan initially was to possibly head out and try and relocate on Sindile, a young male leopard, who we left yesterday evening. Oh, here they go again. We have seen great hyena sightings and interaction from this clan, but I've yet to see them away from their den so playful out in the open. So this is a first for me. And like I say, we have been watching them grow up since they were tiny little black fur balls. And what a treat it is that we can follow the lives of the animals out here so closely. Oh, now look, Jean-Andre. There's a big adult chasing them now. Look at this. I didn't get a good enough look at which one it could be, but It just appeared out of nowhere, and that was the last thing I expected. And again, it is so much fun being on safari because you don't know what is going to happen, and also we didn't know what was happening behind us, but you are soon about to see. Look at this. A beautiful, beautiful sunset. Jandre, there's another one coming past the front of the vehicle now. The older cub. So it is all happening. Again, you can see that distinctive notch on the back right leg. And Nikki in the final control room says that she thought it was the mother of those two twins, so it was the mother chasing those two cubs from earlier. And it looks like that one's also heading back to the den to greet all of them. They've got incredibly complex hierarchies, and what we learned yesterday is that the mother of that individual we can see running off is certainly more dominant than the mother of the two cubs. We had a great display while Jamie was at the den site, so that's great. And we're just going to maybe take you back to this beautiful sunrise now. Look at those colors. What a magical day it's going to be, or well, it already is, I guess, here in the Sabi Sands. Wonderful. Marula tree silhouetted in the foreground. So, not much cloud cover today, and it won't be long before the sun is out and warming us up. But we're going to continue now to the den and see if there is any action. But on our way there, we're going to send you across to Jamie and give her a chance to say good morning to you, and we'll let you know if we find any action at the hyena den.
So, good morning everyone, and welcome to a really beautiful sunrise safari. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jamie, and I have the aardvark on camera with me this morning. So we've got this incredible update from Lynn, who told us about the leopard coughing or sawing. It's descriptive of this way that it sounds when it makes its territorial call, somewhere from the Djuma Dam. So while you guys have been enjoying those wonderfully playful hyena cubs, I've been out looking and listening to see what we can find. However, all seems to be quiet around here, so I'm going to start driving and looping around the dam and just see if I can pick up on any tracks or any sounds that we might hear. I did also hear Nyala alarm calling. However, it only happened once or twice sort of off in this general area, so I'm not sure if it's connected to the leopard that we heard, but I am going to see if we can find out. So exciting stuff on this side, and I'm holding thumbs. We're out nice and early as always, which is a great time to go looking for leopards. So definitely approaching this morning with a certain sense of anticipation. So we're just approaching the dam now. I have already been around the side just to see if I could see anything, and I didn't. But I just wanted to approach from a slightly different angle just to see if there's any tracks around and about on this end. This morning, so I apologize if you are picking up on the slightly squeaky brakes. guys, Scott has made his way around to the hyena den, and unfortunately there's not much action happening on that side, so they're not out and about around the den this morning. But at least you got to see some playful behavior from them. Always a great way to start the morning. Is a truly spectacular morning on Juma Reserve in the Sabi Sands. So I'm just going to switch off for a moment and listen really, really carefully, see if we can pick up on where that leopard has gone. It is fairly nippy this morning, which can mean that the way that sound carries can be slightly deceptive. So on cold, chilly mornings, it could mean that the sound that you're hearing is further away than you thought. It does just carry a lot further on a cold, cold morning like this one. Is 9 degrees centigrade this morning, so I'm definitely feeling the chilly hands, which is 49 degrees Fahrenheit for those of you in those parts of the world. I'm still just trying to listen really nice and quietly, just to see if we get any hint of where this leopard might be. I unfortunately didn't hear the leopard calling myself, but I did hear the alarm calls also in this vicinity, so I am hopeful that we can pick something up around here. So while we're sitting and listening to the various calls and sounds of the bush, Renosta has asked a question about how lions communicate and if they communicate vocally other than by roaring. And the answer to that is yes, they do, especially between mothers and cubs or various members of the prides. They have a very soft contact call that isn't a full roar. So it's more a sort of a sound, very gentle, very quiet, very soft call. And then the cubs will actually almost make a meowing sound, the sort of little sound. Very, very cute to hear. So they do have a bit more of a vocal range other than roaring, but that roaring is a great way of carrying that sound all the way across for a couple of kilometers, just to communicate to the various other lion prides and to other males in the area. So while I sit here and there's the saddle-billed stork's nemesis, the fish eagle. And for those of you who were watching a couple of days ago, the fish eagle did do a very good job of trying to steal a fish from the saddle-billed storks here. So apparently still up to its old tricks, and there it goes off into the distance. So while I spent some time just sitting listening, I'm going to send you back across to Scotty, who has a giraffe in the morning sunlight, and I will keep you guys updated a little bit later.
Well, isn't that a beautiful scene as those two female giraffe head off past the rising sun. There is a third one, a big male, and there he is. And he is following these ladies very closely, as I presume one is in season. He was sniffing the one female's rear end quite intently and salivating profusely, indicating his intents for the morning. He's just taking some time now to use that very long tongue of his to refuel. Beautiful. Just going to try and creep forward a few meters. It's going to be for a screenshot opportunity for you guys. And if we manage to just get a little bit further forward, we're going to get him crossing into the sun, so get ready to get some beautiful screenshots. He is going to follow the ladies, that I can assure you. And I just want to try and get a few more meters onto this lower ground. Here we go. And we'll get some great views of him, hopefully, as he heads towards the ladies. I haven't seen giraffe for quite some time now. There are not too many around at the moment. So a very pleasant surprise. Sadly, the hyena den was not active, and I'm not sure where that mother chased her two cubs off to. Okay, now get ready for some screenshots. Oh no, he's not finished feeding yet. Beautiful, look at this. Absolutely beautiful. I hope a lot of you are firing off some screenshots. This is magical. And we must commend Jean-Andre on his nifty camera work. We were viewing those young hyena quite far from their den site earlier, and a question came through from Lisa asking if I was surprised to see young hyena who are still nursing moving so far from the den. And no, Lisa, it's fairly normal behavior. Hyena can nurse up till a year of age and even older than that. So they nurse for an incredibly long time. And anywhere from 6 months of age, they will start exploring in and around the surroundings of the den, and they have already been seen, at least the largest one, this was a few months ago, taken to an actual kill site, where I think Tingana had a kill in a tree, and the other members of the clan took that youngster a few months ago. So it will vary on the individuals, but they are old enough to be playing around as they were this morning. I mentioned that this bull was sniffing the females very intently earlier, and Lisa would like to know if the giraffe will do the phlegm grimace, much like a lot of the big cats are. And yes, they will. It's not something we see very often, or I've seen very often, but they will certainly do the phlegm grimace, as will buffalo and a lot of the animals out here. Elephants, I guess, will not. Elephants, one animals that I've never seen doing that, and a hippopotamus is another one that I can think does not do the phlegm grimace. But most of the other animals will do that. And what it is, for those of you who don't know, is basically an extra sensory organ that helps process smell in the upper lip of most animals. And the animals need to curl up their lips and often grimace in order to open that up to receive better scent and therefore be able to process it better. Just going to reposition one more time. I think we can, now that we've showed you some great silhouette shots of the giraffe, we're facing the camera into the sun, we'll do the opposites and, oh no, maybe we won't, try and show you some beautiful morning sunlight bathing their puzzle piece coats. These are the two ladies, one of which is sadly in the shade, but she will move around. And they're enjoying the benefits of being very tall and being able to feed on leaves of these bush willow trees that no other animals can really get to other than elephants. Let's see if I can creep forward again. Little black bird fluttering around there is a fork-tailed drongo on the bottom right of the screen, and don't be surprised to see it fluttering in and out of shot as the giraffe chases up little insects. The drongo will fly in and hawk them. What a great view this is. I feel like this tree is very tasty. She's almost frantically plucking off leaves as quickly as she can in a bit of a feeding frenzy. So obviously she's found a tasty tree. Look at those eyelashes. You may have got a few glimpses of some very long eyelashes, which will be useful for sheer beauty alone, and also from a functional purpose it will help protect those eyes as she pushes her head into these bushes. There's the fork-tailed drongo. You may have seen it pop in and out of shot there, taking advantage of Well, there's always new viewers joining, and it's great to hear a new name. And this question is from Zoot in New England. Good to have you with us, Zoot. And if it is your first live safari, I hope you're enjoying it so far. Zoot is wondering, where do giraffe find a safe place to sleep? And I guess they're no different to any of the other animals. They will not be safe anywhere really, but you do get safer areas. Open clearings tend to be safe because there's not many obstacles that predators can use to stalk up to them. But because they typically do find themselves eating leaves, they can often find themselves in well-wooded areas. And a lot of the time they won't necessarily lie down. They are certainly capable of lying down, but their head will always be vertical. So you seldom see giraffes completely horizontal unless they're very young. But you will see adults lying down on all fours with their heads held up vertically. And like I said, all of the prey animals have to kind of sleep with one eye open, listening and smelling for any possible predators. But like I say, any given area could hold predators, and therefore they won't spend too much time looking for a safe area to sleep, so to say, but they would rather make sure that that they sleep with one eye open. It's been a little bit confusing as these giraffes have been moving around, but basically it's one male who, unlike my predictions, has not followed the females very closely, and I actually can't see him anymore. He veered off to the east, and I've got no more view of him, and the two ladies are off to our right. He may just be looping around and not too far, but it's not a pair, and they don't form pairs. Anna Marie was asking, she wasn't sure if it was one male and a female, but it was, like I say, just the two females and one male. Earlier on he seemed very, very excited by the one lady, but that has subsequently changed, and I've got no idea where he's gone. Okay, well, they have headed off into some thick bush, so we're not getting the best views anymore, and there's lots of animals to see out here, so we're going to continue. And we may as well continue down this road that we are, and it'll take us to the treehouse waterhole. And from there, we will probably head west towards the boundary of Djuma and Arathusa. I did get an update from Sean saying that there is, or were, tracks of Shadow, a female leopard who's the mother of Sindile, which is who we got to spend some time with yesterday afternoon. So let's go snoop around there and see what's going on. And Zoot was asking about where the giraffe could sleep safely earlier, and now Judy is interested to know how often will the big cats take down giraffe. In this area, not very often, but the Mangen pride or Salala breakaway pride, it's got two names, that pride, depending on which area you're operating in. They took down a fully grown bull giraffe about a month ago, maybe 3 weeks, just a little bit west of Arathusa, and that's a pride of 13 lions. But it's not commonly seen unless you get prides, especially large prides of 20 plus lion, that may see the benefits in specializing in hunting giraffe. There's a pride of lion in the Kruger Park on a lodge where I used to work close to the Mozambican border called the Mountain Pride. And there was actually a documentary on them. I think the documentary was called Lion Army, because it was an army of lions. And at the moment, that pride's 42 strong. A lot of them are cubs, but it is a large pride, and they have specialized in hunting giraffe for a couple of reasons. The pride is big, and there's a lot of giraffe in that area of the Kruger. So it makes sense for them to specialize in hunting them. But it is mainly only the lions that can kill giraffes, certainly the adults. But it's a very dangerous business, Judy. If you receive a flying hoof from a giraffe, that could be your direct ticket to the next level, the next step, wherever we go after life on Earth. And lions will be aware of those risks and will often possibly attempt to catch giraffe unsuccessfully. But it is important to say that a young giraffe, a baby giraffe, could be preyed on by leopard as well. There are stories of big male leopards catching and killing baby giraffe. Well, there's nobody here at first glance, but it is a beautiful scene. Well, we've just got an update from Rita saying she's seen 7 lions on the Nkoro waterhole camera, and she was wondering if it's any chance that it could be the Nkuhuma pride, and it most certainly is. I did hear an update on the radio earlier saying that they have been located on Nkoro, so well done. You are correct, Rita. And that sadly means we can't see them today, but maybe they'll pop back on our property this evening. You'll notice a few risers, and these are catfish coming up to take in some fresh air. They can process oxygen without having to filter it through their gills, and they can actually live on land for many hours. And basically they would dry up before they would suffocate. So an interesting adaptation of the catfish or barbel. And as the waterholes begin to dry up, there will be less oxygen in them for the fish to process through their gills. Oh, we've got a visitor. And it's one we don't see very often. It's a common duiker running across the far end of the dam. And this is going to be great. Maybe it'll even take a drink for us. That would be something that I haven't shared with you before. But no. Just a brief glimpse of a very large male duiker, actually. Those horns were very impressive. And it's an antelope that only stands about knee high. Good. Okay, well, we've just got a special request from Marco in New Jersey, and he says he's missing not seeing insects. So, and he's noted that it is not the best time of year to view insects because of the fact that it is winter and most of our insect action is during the summer months. But Marco, I've got a solution. Give me a moment or two and you are going to get to see some insects. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and pick up an old pile of dung, probably an elephant, and by picking it up I'm going to hopefully find some termites which are going to be breaking down that dung, recycling those nutrients into the ecosystem, and it shouldn't be too hard to find. Too fresh? isn't going as well as I was hoping it would, but we will get lucky. I'm sure we will. I'm not sure where they're all hiding. What I can show you though, so sadly we can't see any insects on this dried up piece of buffalo dung at the moment. But we can see how the sand has been infused into the dung by the termites, and I'm not sure why I'm not sure where they've gone. They possibly have gone down into the ground below this pile of dung, but they will actively be feeding on it from the bottom. And like I said, it's critical for these termites to help break down all the dung that the animals leave behind so that it can be recycled and reused by the plants to grow in the future. And Marco, sadly, it was a fruitless termite hunt, but I'm sure we'll be able to find you an insect before the end of the drive. So that is my goal now. Usually we are hunting down the lions and the leopards, but today we will be hunting down insects for Marco. I was really confident we were going to just pop over the first pile of dung and have termites crawling everywhere, but maybe the hornbills are the professionals at doing that. Quite often we will see the little hornbills hopping around the waterholes, flipping over little piles of dung and feeding on the termites that are busy breaking them down. Oh, there goes the duiker that we saw a little bit earlier. Just darted off across the road. And their name, duiker, means diver in Afrikaans. And that's because of their usual response to seeing us. They dive off through the vegetation, so they don't get to show them as often as we would like. Now, it's not only me that's been playing around with buffalo dung this morning. Earlier we saw the young hyena cubs taking a few bites and licking the buffalo dung. And June Buggy would like to know if those hyena were starving and that's what caused them to take a few mouthfuls. Certainly not. It's merely them being inquisitive and also possibly acquiring some nutrients that they typically don't get from their milk that they feed on from their mothers, which will be their predominant food at this stage. If a carnivore was starving, eating dung of or vegetable matter will be of no major nutritional value to them. So it is merely an increase in different minerals and nutrients and a bit of inquisitive behavior. Like I said, I have seen lion and leopard licking fresh buffalo dung to get at those minerals and nutrients. Well, anywhere here we could pop into or bump into Shadow and her cub Sindile. We're getting into the area where she does spend time hunting, and we're fairly close to where she left timber, so I'm beginning to scan with extra intent. just got another update through from the Siberia Zoomy. Second one for today. Thanks very much, Siberia. And they can hear buffalo somewhere around the Juma waterhole camera. And I know Jamie is in that area, so why don't you head across to her vehicle and see if she's had any luck finding them.
So guys, welcome back, and as you can see, we have indeed had some luck in finding this buffalo herd. I originally raced off in this direction because I thought that the grunting might mean that there was a potential kill happening. However, it is just a very, very large herd moving through the area. There must be at least 200, probably more. It's very difficult to count because they are in quite a thick block, but there are lots and lots of buffalo around. And I think the only reason that they're vocalizing is just because they are moving together in each other's space, and every now and again somebody steps on somebody else's toes, in a manner of speaking, and just gets into their personal space. Oh, lovely scratch first thing in the morning. And when you don't have hands to scratch and itch, this is the way to go. Find a tree and make it work for you. He looks very, very contented there. Obviously the perfect height just to get to those ticks that target the nice soft areas under the legs and around the tail. He's had a great scratch. This is a very large breeding herd, and I have seen quite a few calves in the area, probably a couple of months old. The calves generally are born around December, January, and sometimes even later than that, around March, so right in the middle of our wet season. And there are a couple wandering around that are maybe 3 or 4 months old. So some very cute little ones. This is really enjoyable for me. It's very exciting. It's my first proper buffalo herd on the Sabi Sands, the first time I've seen them. I have seen lots and lots of males in the area. And there you can hear them making that sound that Siberia picked up on the Juma Dam cam. So this big herd is slowly moving towards the dam. We're probably 700 meters or so away from it, so not too far, and they do look like they're heading in that general direction. Now just pushing into each other. Every now and again one of them gets a little bit of a fright, whether it's nudged by another buffalo or something along those lines, and then they all start to run off in a direction for a while. So most of the herd is moving off. I've still got loads behind me though. I'm actually surrounded by buffalo at the moment. They seem to be everywhere I look. And I'm almost certain they're going to make their way down to the dam for a drink. And the fork-tailed drongo, the little blackbirds that you can hear chirping away, they are having a field day this morning. So they're all flying behind the buffalo, darting in and out and sitting up on the trees, just waiting for them to disturb any insects that are in the ground. And this herd is making a lot of noise as it moves through and creating a lot of disturbance. So a perfect way for the drongos to start their mornings. And with a couple of exceptions, it's mostly the females sticking together and then old males like the one that you can see at the moment moving around the edges. I'm just going to move forward a little bit. I would love to be able to show you, it'll give you a better impression of exactly how many buffalo there are around here. Unfortunately, the block is a little bit thick, so I can't fully give you an impression, but I could just hear buffalo all around me, and it really is quite an intense experience. You can smell them, very much like a cow, very heavy cow smell, and they are just absolutely everywhere. I'm going to just shuffle forward a little bit. There's quite a large group in front of me. You can also hear the oxpeckers chirping away, that very strong sort of zipping sound. And they're all sitting on the various buffalo and helping them with that tick problem that they have. So we can still hear them grunting and groaning. I did originally follow quite intensely just to see if something was happening around the back end of the herd, that it maybe startled them. And there is also always a chance that potentially a big lion pride such as the Nkuhumas are actually following behind this big herd, just looking for an opportunity to potentially take out one of the stragglers. So when I am finished here watching these guys, I am going to loop around and just see if I can see any signs of lion tracks following behind. There is a chance, and I know that the Nkuhumas are looking hungry. I don't know if they've killed yet, but this would be a very, very good opportunity for them to just take a chance and be opportunistic. And I hear that Siberia is on exactly the same wavelength as I am, and definitely wondering if there are lions trailing this herd, just looking for a nice opportunity. And a lion pride attacking a herd of buffalo such as this would have their work cut out for them. They'd have to definitely wait for the right opportunity, because buffalo are known to regularly turn on their attackers, especially a large herd, and actually try and chase them away. So they're not easily daunted all the time, and they will fight back if they can. So a lion pride might be following, but might be a little bit wary of approaching them straight away. They'd have to think it through a little bit. So I've got a question about, just as we're looking at these buffalo, and we're looking at those bald patches around the face and the eye and the skin, and I've got a question from Roy about what causes that. And I'm not entirely sure. I know that they can rub off their fur. There's not that much fur on a buffalo hide, so they can rub it off in itchy patches. But I also think there must be some kind of parasite type thing in their skin that causes those bald patches, and they all seem to have them in different areas. Could be something like a fungus, but I don't think it's quite so serious. I think it might just be a parasite that causes something along the lines of mange, that causes the loss of fur around that area, but I'm not completely certain. So if you have any answers for Roy, please send them through to me on #SafariLive on Twitter, or questions at wildearth.tv. I mentioned a little bit earlier that I could see a couple of calves around, and Lisa was wondering if that, or if buffalo mate seasonally, and if they will calve seasonally. Welcome to the Sunrise Safari, Lisa. As always, fantastic to have your questions. And the answer is generally yes, they do. They will mate sort of, the gestation period is around 11 months, so they mate around April, May season, and then they will start to calve around March, possibly even earlier, so a peak of births towards the rainy season or the wet season. Now that will differ from area to area depending on the rainfall and when it comes and seasonally and so on. And it's not a set rule. It's not like impalas where they have a perfectly set breeding season and then will mate and give birth. It's more of a peak season. So you can get late buffalo births, which I think I did see one really, really tiny calf that was probably only born maybe 2 or 3 months ago at the most. So it's not a set rule, but generally the season will peak at around between December to March. They will have most of their calves, which if you count back 11 months puts the mating season, from December till March, around January till April sort of mating season or peak mating season. So that's generally when they will have their babies. I just want to reposition again because most of these guys have moved into a very, very thick block, and I'd like to try and stay with them. It's interesting that they've moved away from the dam as well. I'm not going to go crashing through the bushes after them because they will just keep running away from me. It's not very polite. But I'm just going to try and loop around on the road and see if maybe I can show you one of those tiny little calves that I was talking about. I don't know that that's going to happen. They really are tucked away in this thick, thick bush. Oh, hyena. That is a very brave hyena. Well, not that brave. Changed his mind. And is back out again. This could be interesting for this little hyena. I'm not sure if it is deliberately following behind, looking for a potential hunting opportunity. If it is, then it won't be acting alone. There will be other hyenas, so I'll try and stay with it. There's a very strong chance that the buffalo are going to try and chase it away. Oh, and he's back again. I think he might have strayed a little bit too deeply into the herd and isn't quite sure of a good safe direction to head off in. He or she doesn't seem to want to stick around to actually be seen, and I can't say I blame it, because buffalo will definitely chase that hyena if it gets too close. I can just see its tail end vanishing off into the thick block. Unfortunately, I can't follow it. I definitely can't get the car in there fast enough to even keep track of it. So we'll just have to hope that we can hear something if there's anything else going on in there. I don't think it's a genuine hunting attempt or anything like that. I think it was just investigating what was going on. Maybe if there's other clan members in the area, they might be doing a very similar thing to the lion pride and just sort of scoping out the area, looking for an opening that they could hunt in. But a risky job for a little lone hyena. There's a chance that it could get chased, and if it is cornered, the buffalo will kill it. They have been known to do that, especially with lions, and they've even been known to seek out lion cubs that are denning in the areas that they are in and actually deliberately go and kill them, just as a way of reducing the number of predators in their area and reducing the threat levels to themselves and their offspring. I'm just listening. No, it's definitely disappeared off back into the block. Forward again. That hyena's crossing backwards and forwards. Not sure what it's up to. I think just taking a chance, hoping to get lucky. Good morning, buffalo. So as I was approaching this sighting and following the calls of the buffalo and then realizing I was in the middle of a very, very large herd of buffalo, I was just thinking about what it would be like to experience this on foot. And I haven't actually ever walked in on a large herd of buffalo, or at least a herd of buffalo this size before. The areas that I've worked have always had much, much smaller herds. And Dara was wondering what I would do in that situation, and if I would try and observe them on foot or if I would back away. And I was thinking about it and thinking I really wouldn't want to end up in the middle of this herd by mistake, until I actually stopped to listen to all of the sounds that they were making, and definitely hearing lots and lots of noise, crashing and so on. So surprising them wouldn't be an option. You'd have to be walking with your ears blocked to not hear this herd coming. And generally breeding herds of buffalo are much safer to approach on foot, especially if you've got a nice safe point. So for this group I would not approach them, just because it is a very, very large herd and we're in a very thick area. But watching them from the other side of a dam or finding a nice safe fallen over tree, something along those lines, it would be fine to sit and observe them. Generally with breeding herds, if they get a fright or something startles them, they don't tend to charge it, they actually tend to run away for a little bit and then stop and look. And once one buffalo runs, they will all tend to follow. It's just that herd mentality. The lone buffalo bulls are the ones that are much more dangerous and tend to be a lot grumpier. So a breeding herd like this, I wouldn't approach in this kind of environment just because it is so thick. But it is a possibility in more open areas, especially if you've got nice safe points to hide behind and move behind if you need to. I can see one tiny little calf. I'm just going to try and shuffle forward a little bit. It might be very difficult for Andrew to be able to get a view of. I was trying to roll forward without starting my engine. Do you think you can... Ah, no, it's going to move off. Unfortunately, we're just catching the tail end. There's a tiny calf in the back there that I would put at maybe 2 months old. They grow very, very rapidly. Here you can just see the tail end. Here you go, quite a small little buffalo calf. Looking at it now, maybe 3 months, but they do grow very, very rapidly. But that one would probably have been born around April sometime. So right at the end of their main birthing season. So So we've seen the hyena sort of crisscrossing around this area, just chancing his luck and looking around. And Donna has suggested that maybe he was looking for a vulnerable calf around the back sort of areas of the group, around the herd, just taking his chances to see what he could find. And I agree with you, I definitely think he was looking for something like a potential opportunity to hunt. However, it would be very, very risky in this kind of situation, especially in an environment that's so thick. It would be very difficult to sneak a calf away without the herd turning on it. So it would be a risky maneuver, but I think it is just chancing its luck, trying to see what it can find, which is why as I'm talking to you, I'm still listening very intently, just in case something does happen, and we can try and follow up on it. I don't think that anything has happened to any of the buffalo in this herd around the area, just because they are quite relaxed. They don't seem to be too unsettled. However, it is a possibility. We do see often in a situation where an animal is killed by something like a lion pride, the rest of the herd might stick around and observe from a safe distance, so they don't necessarily go sprinting off away from it. But there's also recorded cases, and I'm sure that many of the viewers have seen the video, The Battle at Kruger, where an entire buffalo herd does go back and actually chase off a lion pride, or at least a lion, away from a buffalo calf. So that is also always a possibility. So I don't think they would be moving and quite so relaxed if something was happening. That being said, I still want to cover all the bases. So once we're finished here, I am going to loop around to where I think the back of the herd will be, sort of towards the opposite end to where they're going, and just see if I can catch up with any of them there and see what's happening towards the back of this herd. I honestly have no idea how many there are here. I think probably something, good couple of hundred at least. So guys, most of these buffalo have moved off into this really, really thick area around the dam. They are probably a couple of 100 meters still from it, so I don't think we're going to miss them drinking anytime soon. They're still just going into this thick drainage line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop back around to the back of the herd, and in the meantime I'm going to send you back to Scott, who's got some exciting and very fresh tracks, and I will catch up with you guys a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. And how awesome is it that not only did we get to see this large herd of buffalo yesterday afternoon, but also today with Jamie. Now those are leopard tracks, very fresh leopard tracks. They look like tracks of Sindile, a young male, and they veer off this road to the right. And we've just stopped here hoping that we may be able to scan this bush and work out where he's gone from here. He could be lying nearby. So take a closer look in here, and you guys can help us. They're so well camouflaged that sometimes you guys can actually see better than we can through the zoom of this camera. And let's see if we have any luck here. Nothing yet. Still nothing there, I don't see. The tracks were heading a little bit more in the direction where we're going now, though, and what's that? Well, we had to just play around a little bit with you guys there. We found Sindile, and I must commend Gendre on his tracking skills. He spotted the tracks which helped lead us to this young male leopard. And actually what happened is that we drove down this road following the tracks, and they were moving in this general direction, and the tracks veered off the road. So what we thought we'd do is just go a little bit further ahead just to make sure they didn't pop out back onto the road, as they sometimes weave and zigzag. no tracks came out further ahead, so we jumped off on foot to come and fine-tune and find out exactly where the tracks headed off. And as I saw the tracks heading off the road, I looked up and there he was lying, crouching, watching me only a few meters away. And we then went back to the vehicle, got it, and we're going to reposition now for you so that you can see a better view of him. But we just thought we'd try and show you the tracks that led us to his whereabouts this morning. Interestingly, he was here with his mother. There's tracks of both of them here, so they obviously reunited last night temporarily. And then she continued, leaving him here. She's gone off to try and find them their next meal. I'm going to get a great low angle. There's a bit of a dip here. Should work. So she'll be off trying to get their next meal. There's no urgency for them to feed again. You can still see his belly's quite full. And it's full of steenbok that they fed on, not yesterday, but the day before. 2 nights ago, they finished off a steenbok kill. It's a small antelope, but it filled up both of their bellies, his more than hers. And now he's enjoying basking in this morning sunshine. Like I said, it was a crisp and cold evening in the Sabi Sands last night. And only now is it beginning to warm up a little bit, and he's got a good spot there with a bit of dappled sunlight warming his rosetted coat. I wonder where his mother's gone exactly. She could be hunting either on Djuma or Arathusa. We are right on the boundary between these two properties that we are lucky enough to traverse. Now, we've been spending a lot of time with this young male leopard over the last few weeks, and we haven't seen too many others. We saw Tingana earlier in the week quite briefly, which is in all likelihood this young leopard's father. But Lamont would like to know, are there any other leopards? Why are we only viewing these ones, or this one specifically and its mother from time to time? The reason is quite simple. There are other leopards, but young males are easiest to track down because they are left in areas by their mothers when they go off hunting. And they usually don't move too far, which makes our life a lot easier in finding them. Adult leopards, especially the males, will move huge distances and are a little bit harder to track down. And usually leopards always move alone, whereas with a mother and her cub, just like this morning, we had sets of 2 leopards' tracks to follow, and that also makes it a little bit easier. We've also kind of got to know the whereabouts and hangouts, which are in a relatively confined area for this young male, whereas again, adults will move bigger distances, and there certainly have been tracks of other leopards that we haven't managed to find. And I guess luck has just been in our favor to find him. Even though I say that he is in confined areas, he's moved probably half a mile from where we saw him last night. And in this thick vegetation, even if we know where he may be, we may not always find him. So I guess you could just say we could attribute it to a couple of things, but luck is also involved. Good question though, Lamont, and it is a good point you've raised here. We haven't been seeing too many other leopards. Karula was reported to cross into Djuma from Buffelshoek 2 or 3 nights ago, but we had no luck in finding her. Well, as I mentioned earlier, when we found young Sindile, ooh, excuse me, we were on foot, and Dylan would like to know, what are the differences between tracking adult leopards and young leopards when on foot? Is there anything we should look out for or be cautious of? And Dylan, there's no major difference whether you're tracking a young leopard or an old leopard. It all depends on the individual leopard that you are tracking and how habituated it is to humans. Typically, leopard who are not habituated to us would not even let us get remotely close to them in a vehicle or on foot. They would sense us coming and either hide from us or slink off into the vegetation, not even allowing us to get a glimpse of them. Whereas most of the leopards in the Sabi Sands are accustomed to being tracked and found on foot. And once the few initial leopards were habituated in the Sabi Sands many, many years ago, probably 40 years ago, the habituation started. It's had a ripple effect through generations. And Shadow, who was born to Karula, would have been exposed to trackers finding her mother, Karula, and her on foot, and never harming them, never hurting them, never feeding them, so fitting into this kind of strange neutral bracket. And then Shadow passed on the same fairly relaxed tendencies to humans, to young Sindile, who we're looking at now. And I believe when Jamie found him and Shadow the other day on their Steenbok kill, she also got incredibly close to him on foot, and he just lay there hiding. The trick is when finding any leopard on foot, and as soon as I did see him this morning, I continued gazing straight past him, so I looked over him as if I didn't see him, and then turned around and started walking back the other direction, not locking eye contact on him, which makes him feel that he actually hasn't been seen. And that makes him feel a lot more comfortable, and he didn't even actually flinch, because he didn't realize that I had spotted him. So that's the trick when you do find leopard on foot. It's best to pretend you haven't seen them, even if you are very close to them. You just carry on walking as if nothing ever happened. Go back to the vehicle and then you return to view them. I didn't get a response from any of the Arethusa guys when I called this in on the radio earlier, so I'm probably going to try let the guys know again. And there is another guy called Greg making his way, a Buffelshoek vehicle. Greg for Scots. Greg for Scots. Just to let you know, nothing's changed. If you come to the junction, Gari Main, Triple M, you will find us. Copy, perfect. Apologies, everyone. It is important that I help the other guys and keep them updated on the sighting. And I just want to try and get a hold of the Arethusa guys one more time, because earlier when I called them, I didn't get any response. Can any station copy me? Avshin, good morning. Shadows Bantuan is lying up. Triple M, Gari Main, junction. Okay, copy. I'm back on Navuya's channel. There's going to be 2 stations here shortly if the third does want to join. Wow, he's popped up his head. What has got your attention, young Sindile? Is it just the wind? It's causing you to double check nothing's creeping up on you. I'm hoping he's going to get playful, and all we need for that to happen is a few francolin to come walking past or some dwarf mongooses. He will actively try and catch little prey items while he is left alone, and Jamie got to see him with a dwarf mongoose kill. It was the first time we've ever actually seen him with a kill of his own. That's not to say it was his first one, it's just the first one that we've seen him with. But we've yet to actually see him successfully catch anything yet. So that is something that could happen, and I'm sure will happen in the coming months. A lot of you may be wondering, why doesn't he go off and join his mother in the hunting if he's capable of catching small prey? And Deer's just asked that question. It's a good one, but the easiest way for me to explain it is that he is still young and he is still fine-tuning the art of hunting, which he instinctively knows. He knows to chase objects and animals, and he would have started catching small grasshoppers and butterflies when he was born. Oh, and we're in luck, he's on the move. Oh, that was a bit of an awkward stretch. But Deer, if he was to go out hunting with his mother, it wouldn't necessarily help. They are not social animals, they do not hunt together. And his mother knows how to hunt alone, and it's best to leave her to do what she knows how to do and secure their next meal. And while he is left alone, he can still practice hunting. Like I said, small mongooses, francolin. The art of hunting can be applied to any animal, and it's best for him to be alone and practice on these small prey, which will put him in good stead for catching his own meals later on, and that way it ensures that he will in no way at all impact on the more serious hunting, which is acquiring their food. That's not to say, though, that in the next 6 months he could be left alone and catch a large prey animal that his mother surprisingly would come back to and find him with an impala kill. It is possible. But he does still need to grow a little bit more, and it's not worth the mother taking him to teach him to hunt, because he instinctively knows how to. And he can continue fine-tuning his hunting techniques without her being here. Also, youngsters are playful, I guess. It's like saying, why don't you take your kid to work and teach them about life alongside you at the workplace? And I'm sure a lot of parents would agree that no work would get done and your kid would just bother you and want to play with you and distract you. And I guess we could relate that to leopard. If adult female has her job to do, and that is getting their next meal, and he can teach himself what he needs to know without distracting her. Well, we probably should reposition. He's just gone into the shade to get comfortable, so obviously that beautiful coat of his is keeping him nice and warm, and he's now seeking refuge of a bit of shade. And while we reposition, we are going to send you back to an entirely new position with Jamie, and I'm sure you're all interested to know what she's up to now. We will see you later.
So guys, welcome back. And just while I chat to you, I'm just going to turn the vehicle off. So, wonderful news. Scott has got Sindile. How wonderful that he managed to follow up on those beautifully fresh tracks, and I hope that was a nice surprise for all of you. So while you guys were with Scott, I was just looping around the area to see if there's any signs of lions or any other predators following behind this buffalo herd. and so far nothing yet. I haven't picked up any tracks, and we basically reverse tracked all the way around where the herd came from Buffels Hook. They moved south from there across the cut line and then into this block here on my left. So we've been following up very carefully, looking around. I did hop on the radio just to ask for any updates, and apparently the Nkuhuma Pride has crossed all the way east towards the Kruger side of things. So they are definitely not in the area. But the Birmingham boys were last seen yesterday just north in Buffels Hook. So we're not giving up hope just yet, as I'm sure many of you know that they are renowned for their buffalo hunting prowess. So there is a good chance that we could still see them somewhere in the area. So we're holding thumbs for that. And for any new viewers, when I talk about the Birmingham boys, I'm talking about a coalition of 5 male lions that have been moving around more regularly in this area and around Djuma, and they are sort of around, I believe, 4 years old. I could be corrected on that. They're still quite young. One of them might be a little bit older, but they are very big lions, and they're starting to come into their prime now. So it'd be very exciting to see if they are in the area. I'm still on the lookout for tracks, but I haven't found anything yet. And we're just going to loop back to where the buffalo were. Still on the lookout, so keep your eyes peeled. You never know what you might find. And for any of you who are wondering about the Styx Pride, as far as I know, they are still south of our boundary, the Chitwa area. So they haven't moved back up into Djuma for a little while. So far, the only tracks I have picked up on are hyena. My hand is blowing away, so we'll put that there for now. So the hyena have been active in the area, and if you've just joined us, we did see one hyena sort of trying his luck around the buffalo herd, just looking for a nice and vulnerable opening. And I'm sure that if there is one, there are more skulking around the area. Hyena still. So while I make my way back to the buffalo herd just to see what's going on, I will send you back to Scott, so now that he's repositioned his vehicle, and you can join him in enjoying Sindile. So I'll catch up with you guys a little bit later.
Welcome back, and we've got ourselves into a good position here. I hope Jamie does get lucky with the Nkuhuma Pride trailing that large herd of buffalo. It's a good call on her behalf. There's a strong likelihood, if they haven't caught one of those buffalo last night, that they could well still be trailing them, in the hope that they could find a weakness. There's another vehicle that's just arrived here, so hopefully they will be able to try and squeeze in a spot here next to us. But we certainly do have the best view for them. Earlier on we were chatting about the fact that we've been spending more time with this young male leopard than any of the others, and a few of you have sent through some requests on any intelligence we may have on Mvula, the dominant male on Djuma, and where he may be. And I haven't heard of any sightings of Mvula for quite some time, so I'm not too sure where he is, sadly. And we've got another update saying that another dominant male that we've only seen once, and this is from an update from Angie, saying that the Mala guides have renamed, or nicknamed rather, the Anderson male the Ghost, because he can be so tricky to find and can slink very close past people without finding him. So some interesting intelligence on the Anderson male there. So thanks very much, Georgianne and Angie, for sending through those questions and updates. Mvula could be just about anywhere. He is tending to spend more time north of us in Buffelshoek and also east of us into Torchwood, because Tingana is getting pressure from the Anderson male. So basically it's a ripple effect of the Anderson male pushing Tingana from the west to the east, and Tingana then pushing on Mvula further east. So there's a slight change in dynamics and therefore territories of the dominant males in this area, and that's what's having an effect on even Shadow and this young leopard here, Sindile, because she's realized the threat that the Anderson male poses to Sindile, and if he was to come across this cub, he would kill it in order to release Shadow of her responsibility of raising it, and therefore he could mate with her. And I think that's why Shadow's pushing more onto Juma than she ever did before. Over November, December, January, we would very seldom see her unless we were deep into Arethusa, whereas over the recent months we find her quite often on Juma, and she's almost spending half of her time here and half on Arethusa. And another leopard that a lot of you may know is Karula, who is, you could say, almost the grandmother of this leopard. She gave birth to Shadow, and Debbie would like to know if there's been any confirmed sightings of Karula recently. The last one, Dr. Debbie, is I think from 2 or 3 nights ago. She crossed into Juma from Buffelshoek, and I think Craig saw her coming into our property that night. We were sadly no longer broadcasting, so couldn't race you across there. But Craig did say that she had a small gash on her leg. It didn't sound like anything serious, but we could expect to see her with a small wound on her leg next time we do see her. And it's interesting, I'm almost of the opinion that she may have given birth and no one got to see her cubs. They may have been killed by male leopard, which is often the biggest killer of leopard cubs, or anything, even a python, lion, hyena. But I've got a feeling that she gave birth and those cubs were killed before anyone actually got to see them or was aware that she had given birth. Because considering that she lost cubs in December last year, she should well have given birth by now. They often will mate within weeks after losing cubs in order to get the next generation out, and it only takes about 3 months, just over 3 months gestation period. So technically she should have given birth by now, and the fact that she was seen mating with a skittish male about a week ago, a week and a half ago in Buffelshoek. It's an unknown male that the Buffelshoek people see from time to time, but he is quite nervous. The fact that she was seen mating with him leads me to think that she, or helps to confirm my theory, and that she has lost cubs and now is mating again in order to get another crack at it. But it's hard to say. Leopards are known to come into or mate with various males, even if they aren't necessarily in season, and that gives them the false sense of fathership, therefore creating increased chance of their cub survival. If several males think they are the father, they will therefore not kill the cubs, even though they may technically not be responsible for that cub that they may assume is their son. No worries, Greg. Have a good one, man. Now, one thing that we haven't seen very recently is any lion and leopard interaction. Although yesterday, shortly after the Nkuhuma Pride crossed east into Torchwood in the morning with James, they were trailing a large herd of buffalo, and they bumped into a male leopard that they chased. And lions will chase leopards, and leopards will run from lions. It's no match for a leopard to take on a lion. And Pretty Nightmare is just asking that exact question. She would like to know, what are the chances of them interacting and coming into contact one another? Lions will actively seek out leopard and try and kill them, and also steal their kills. But leopards are considerably smaller than lions, Pretty Nightmare. A fully grown male leopard, a big male, would weigh 100 kilograms, whereas your average lioness would weigh 120, and big males up to 200. So there's the size difference, and also the social dynamics means that 90% of the time leopards are alone, and lion are in either a pride or a coalition, so they've got numbers on their side as well. It would be interesting to know how many times young Sindile has been treed by lions so far in his life. I'm sure it would be an interestingly high amount. Speaking of lion and interacting, hopefully there will be some lions interacting with the buffalo when you get back to Jamie. She's still out there, and we're going to send you back to her for an update.
So guys, welcome back, and we finally managed to get this buffalo herd out in the open, so you can really get an idea of numbers. There's at least 100 moving around in the block behind this, and there's probably even more. So really nice big herd making their way slowly towards the dam. Still no signs of the lions yet, but I was updated that the Birmingham boys have moved from their last position, which was on Buffelshoek Hook around Big Dam, and they have moved away from that area, and nobody is quite sure where they've gone. So the anticipation builds, because there is a chance that they've moved to follow this buffalo herd. So exciting stuff. Is a very windy day. The wind has picked up considerably in the last half an hour, which would make ideal hunting conditions, because it would help to hide the scent and the sound of the lions hunting, so they could well use that to their advantage. You can see how much more comfortable they are with my presence here than they were earlier. just because we started out much further away from them and then just stopped, just sort of trying to predict which way they were going to go. So they've been able to choose to approach us. So whereas before they were in the thick block and we were just moving around them and they were a little bit unsettled, now they are very, very relaxed and just quite happily making their way towards us. So these guys are slowly making their way towards the dam, and David and Edward are both asking how it is that the buffalo herds decide where to go. What dictates their movement? Is it random, or because they're without a matriarch or a patriarch, how do they decide where to go? And the answer to that is generally there will be one or two older females who will make a decision for the rest of the herd and start to move off instinctively and follow set patterns, and they are very, very water dependent, so their movements will be dictated by their ability to make their way to and from and between dams and then to rich grazing potentials. So the movements aren't generally led by the males in breeding herds. The males will kind of just follow behind wherever the females choose to go, and it will generally be the older females who dictate which direction they head off in. Then with the bachelor herds that move around, so the groups of males that are on their own, it is generally quite random. I'm not too sure how their movements are dictated. I think probably it is just a sort of random decision, and it will be entirely dependent on, again, access to water and then access to good types of grazing grass, because there are lots and lots of different species of grass out here, and not all of them have the same high nutritional value. So they'll make their way to known areas around them where they can pick up on something like red grass, Themeda triandra, all of those species of grass that just carry that nice nutritious content. And an area like this that they're moving through, they are grazing here, but that's largely because it's close to the water and it's just part of their movement pattern. Oh, Phlegm and Grimace. Here we go. A buffalo pulling what looks like a very funny face. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, that is known as a Phlegm and Grimace. And it's done by almost all of the, at least, mammal species out here. Snakes do it as well, but by using their tongues and flickering their tongues. Snakes and other reptiles. And basically what he's doing there is he's just pulling up the lips and scrunching up his nose, and it opens up an organ that sits in the top of his mouth called the organ of Jacobson, or the vomeral nasal organ. And that's a very, very specialized organ that is focused on interpreting the scents around him. So it might just have been checking another buffalo's urine, maybe a female's, just seeing what her reproductive status is, if she's potentially ready to mate. That is the reason behind the funny face he was just pulling. If you heard that crashing sound off to the left, that was just some of the buffalo getting into a little skirmish. One of them just got too closely into the personal space of the other and got chased away. So looking and listening to this massive herd of buffalo, you can't help but think about domesticated cows, especially with all of the mooing that's going on in the background. And Dr. Debbie would like to know, have there been attempts in the past to domesticate them, maybe to use them as beasts of burden, and if so, and also if they are consumed for meat? And there have been situations in the past where buffalo have been domesticated. However, there is one very important factor to consider, and that is the fact that they are very, very strong carriers of diseases like tuberculosis and foot and mouth disease. And these are diseases that can be passed both between buffalo and cattle and also to people. So they are not, and these diseases are naturally occurring in this area. So in general, there's not much farming done with buffalo for the purpose of domestication and food products, at least in terms of the diseased buffalo in this area. I know that in certain areas around the world, around Eastern Africa, there were attempts to domesticate, but they're not as successful as cows. They're not potentially as resilient as cows in terms of the domestication and farming. And you can eat buffalo, and people do, but generally they're kept more as in game farms and protected in areas like this. Now with disease-free buffalo, so animals that have been deliberately bred from disease-free stock of buffalo, those animals have actually become worth a great deal of money. And the South Africa's agricultural systems and tourism systems have worked together to create what's known as the Red Line, which runs just to the east of us, to the west of us, around through Hoedspruit area. So anything east of that line, so the Kruger Park and including these buffalo, these animals are considered diseased. They do carry things like tuberculosis, but anything west of that is disease-free. And it's taken a good couple of decades to breed up a nice, healthy, disease-free population of buffalo, which has made them worth a lot of money. And there are a lot of private landowners who breed them and farm them, almost in a domestic sense, as we might understand them, just because they have become so valuable and they've become traded as valuable property and investments. And females generally will be worth a lot more money than the males. So in that sense, they are farmed, but not so much for eating or for working as a way of earning money and investing in breeding herds. These guys are being very vocal. I'm not sure what the source of their displeasure is. Possibly just communication between the herds. And Gilly from Milwaukee would like to know, or she's heard reports of stories, that buffalo have very good long-term memories and that they have been known to charge people who have done them wrong, often months later or months after the event or years after the event. And she was just wondering if I've ever heard stories about this. Good morning and welcome to the Sunrise Safari. I haven't actually heard of any stories around buffalo having these long-term memories, but I wouldn't be surprised. They can have fairly long lifespans, and they are not entirely stupid animals. They will have some kind of memory attached to it. However, I think the idea of them remembering for years which specific person has done them any harm is maybe a little bit far-fetched. It might just be that they associate people with harm done to them. But I haven't heard stories about that, so it is really interesting, and I might ask the other guides after the drive if they have heard of any reports of that kind of thing. And I know that elephants are renowned for their incredible long memories. However, they are very different animals to buffalo. They've got much, much larger brains and much more nerve pathways devoted to their memory section of their brains. There's a lot of mooing going on. I think it is just communication between the various herd members. And I don't know about you guys, but I have completely lost count of how many have just come through, and they still show no signs of slowing down. There's plenty more still at the back there. And with the wind blowing and pushing up all of that dust around them, it does make for a very atmospheric sight. What's up? So we are hearing lots and lots of calling at the back there, and I can hear it far back as well, so this herd is absolutely enormous. And it might be that some of the calls are from females whose calves have become slightly separated in the movement of this large herd, and they're just calling to let them know where they are so that the calves can follow back. And the calves will also call at a slightly higher pitch, because when you are moving together in such a big herd, it is easy to lose your mom for a bit. And that's not a position that a little buffalo calf wants to be in, because it immediately makes it more vulnerable. As you can see, this is an absolutely enormous herd, a good couple of hundred animals moving around. And Fiona would like to know if it would mean that this herd could split off into different smaller groups simply because it is so big. And that is a very interesting question, and there is a good chance that they could. So they are not set in this herd. The herd might divide, move off in different directions, especially if some of the older females disagree as to which direction they go in. And some move off one way and others move off the other way. So they might split off, they might come back together. As always, there is plenty of safety in numbers around here. So having a big herd is not necessarily disadvantageous, but maybe as the resources get more and more limited and the water sources get more and more limited, you'll actually find that instead of splitting off, the herd gets bigger and bigger as more animals join, as they meet at water sources or around water sources. So splitting apart or moving together, it is entirely possible, and it just depends on the movements of the various animals themselves. And these guys are making their way towards the dam, slowly but surely. So what I would like to do is go and set up and hopefully have them coming in to have a drink. And while I do that, I'm going to send you back to Scott, who is still with Sindile, and I will be back to update you in a moment.
Welcome back, and you'll notice that Sindile has repositioned ever so slightly. He's moved deeper into Juma and continuing to seek out little patches of shade as it heats up. The wind is picking up as the sun is rising and kind of counteracting the warmth from the sun due to this little breeze, but it's still a little bit warm for him with his thick coat. wonderful to hear that you were surrounded by that herd of buffalo earlier, and it's wonderful that we are spending time with them, because, like I said, we don't get to see them as much as we would like. I'm not sure what he keeps looking up at there. I keep looking behind, and it's not uncommon for predators to look at and follow vultures and other birds of prey. But I can't see anything up behind him, or up in that direction he's looking in every now and then. We were chatting earlier why and how the leopard dynamics are working here, and why we are spending more time with this leopard than any other over the last few weeks. And I mentioned that it's because he keeps spending time in kind of similar areas that we get used to, and one of these areas is this main road. And Rita would like to know, is it normal for a leopard to hang around on such a busy road? And I guess it's through default more than anything else that he is spending more time here. I have thought about it, Rita, and can't kind of pinpoint why it is that he spends a lot of time along this main road. Maybe his mother knows that at least he'll have the cars to watch going by to keep him entertained while she's away. Looks like he's busy entertaining himself with this small tree. And what will he do next? I've seen him attack a tree once. It was not far from here, actually. It was a beautiful sighting. And we may get a similar display this morning. You'll notice there he really focused his attention, and those were little leaves blowing in the wind, and he may even attack these little leaves. He seems to be getting a bit of a playful streak in him now. Maybe he's waking up. And let's watch him very closely. He could get up and pounce on one of these leaves rustling away from him. Now, for those of you who don't know this leopard too well, he is coming on a year of age now, and anywhere from about 18 months of age, so in about 6 months' time, we could expect to see his mother being less tolerant of him, forcing him to start making his own plans and fending for himself. No different to, I guess, us humans when we get kicked out of home and need to start working for ourselves and creating our own life. Oh, nice big stretch. And hopefully we will be here to see him become independent and grow up. He's going to grow a lot more, that's for sure. And Jennifer's asked an interesting question on this topic of independence. She's wondering on my thoughts as to, will a single leopard cub become independent sooner than a couple of leopards that may be raised together? And I guess it will all depend on the individuals and their mothers' tendencies. Some mothers will kick their cubs out slightly younger than others, and others will tolerate them for longer periods of time. But my general inclination or theory would be that a female would be more likely to chase off two cubs, therefore I think 2 cubs would become independent sooner than 1, because it's easier for her to continue looking after 1 cub as it gets big and as its appetite increases. Whereas, imagine if she had 2 of these to look after, I would also be inclined to boot them out and have less responsibility earlier on. And I guess you could say it's maybe spoilt being an only child, and if there was 2 of them it would get less attention. Where are you going now, Cindy? To find more shade? Yep. About the only thing it looks like he's going to be hunting this morning are the shadows to keep him cool. But I do notice this kind of playful streak picking up in his mood. And he may just be warming up the engines and, who knows, maybe running up and down chasing things shortly. But for now, like I say, he still appears to be waking up. Okay, well, let's try and reposition quickly. Some great views here, and his playful streak is continuing. He's found a branch that he's got now between his legs, and he's busy attacking. Not as tasty as the steenbok you were chewing on a few days ago, is it, Sindile? Well, we've just got a very interesting question, one that I don't think had before, and it's from Sharon in Pittsburgh. Sharon's interested to know, if we were to shave the coat of a leopard, would we see the spots on the skin? Oh, what are you doing? Where are you coming now, young Sindile? Creeping a little bit closer to us. This is great. And I'm not sure. I'm inclined to think that yes, we would see the pigments on the skin if we were to shave it. And another question that Sharon asks is, was he born with all of his spots, or will more spots continue to develop? And no, his coat will remain exactly the same from the day he's born till the day he dies. The only slight changes we may see, look at how awesome this is if he was to have a fight or scratch himself, then his skin may grow back in a slightly different manner, but all the spots will remain exactly the same, provided he isn't injured. Speaking of which, we can actually look at some spots that will be used to identify leopards. Now, just above the black whisker lines that the whiskers grow out of, oh, he's just moved into an angle where it's not going to be good for us to see. Oh. I just let the car roll back an inch there, and it gave him a little bit of a fright. Sorry, Sindile. But now that he has got his head up, you can see 3 individual little freckles above his right muzzle and another 3 on his left. But those 3 little spots between the whisker lines and his nose are very often used to help determine which leopard we are viewing. Wonderful. Now we can see a bit more clearly, at least the ones on his left muzzle. Two are almost joined. And then on his right muzzle we can see the more individual freckles. So we would say he's got a 3-3 spot pattern. Now it could be a 3-4 spot pattern, or 1-3, or 1-4. There's various different patterns that the leopards can have. Obviously some of them will have the same, but then we'll look for other spots to help us distinguish who's who. Don't mind me while I take some photos, and I'm sure a lot of you are also going to be taking some screenshots. Go ahead, Abel. Affirmative. Yeah, come straight here. It's just me here. Best access will be from Gari Main, probably 50 meters west of Triple M. Apologies, 50 meters east of Triple M. Come south from Gari Main, and you'll find us in the block here. Apologies, everyone. I was just calling in Abel, another guide who would like to come and have a closer look. And I believe a lot of you are commenting on his beauty, and young leopards, as well as young lions, I guess, are flawless and really beautiful to look at. And it will be interesting to see how big he does get. He's got a long way to go before he is fully grown, but impossible to say how big he will end up being. The wonderful thing about the Sabi Sands is that there is a strong chance, even if we may not be able to follow his movements, other guides will follow his movements in other areas of the reserve, and that way keep a close tab on his life. we were chatting earlier if there's any chance this leopard spots would change as it gets older, and I said no to that. And Jennifer's now asking if there's any chance that his eyes will stay this same color with a kind of light, very slight bluish tinge to them. And I think they will stay very similar to how they look now. I don't think his eyes will change much as he becomes older. At least in all of the leopards that I have seen growing up, the changes are often in the initial few months, up to about 6 months of age in terms of eye color, and from then on it tends to stay fairly similar. So I don't expect any major changes in his color of eyes, or the color of his eyes. His nose may change color as he gets older. It may become more black, but again, that does depend on the individual, and there's no set rule for that. Well, we've got some great news, everyone, and I must say a very big thank you to Safari Hayes for introducing Safari Live to Jacob, who's just joined the Safari Live team for the first time now. And Jacob, I'm so happy to have you with us and glad that you're enjoying this sighting. I must say, though, that it's not a cheetah, it's a leopard. And we're going to have to get you tuned into a few more safaris so we can teach you the differences between leopard and cheetah. But because we don't see cheetah here very often, what I am going to do is I'm going to pull out my book, and that way be able to point out to you right now exactly how to tell the difference. And it's a mistake that you won't make again. And hopefully next time when you do join us on Safari Live or over the coming drives, we will be able to find you a cheetah. Like I say, we don't see many here, Jacob, but let me show you the differences between a cheetah and a leopard quickly. If we zoom in here onto the top picture, you will notice that the animal in view is a cheetah, and it's got solid black spots. So unlike the rosette of a leopard, which often has a caramel inner, the cheetah's got solid black spots, and it's also got tear marks. It's not easy to see, but it's got tear marks running down its eye along the side of the muzzle. They're also more slight and slender in build compared to a leopard. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to page over to the next page, which is going to be a picture of a leopard. And you'll immediately be able to see now the difference. Here you can see the rosettes, they're not solid black spots. And it lacks the tear mark down the side of the muzzle. So there we go, Jacob, there's your first safari lesson. And like I said yesterday, there's a lot of people who don't know about Safari Live, so best you spread the word and keep telling all of your friends, because the more people that watch will mean the more likely it is that we can not only film here in the Sabi Sands, and don't get me wrong, I love doing what we do from this destination. It's an incredible wilderness destination. But if more of you tune in, we could maybe go elsewhere and take you on safari on other parts of Africa. So keep spreading the word. In the meantime, we can keep looking at this beautiful young leopard who's just a few meters away. And because he looks fast asleep and like he's not going to go anywhere, we're going to send you across to Jamie, He's got a little bit more action where she is. Enjoy.
So, welcome back everyone, and a little bit earlier, Edward and David asked me about buffalo movements and how they decide where to go, and while I was chatting to everyone, I repeatedly said that they were making their way towards the dam, and it's yet another important lesson, and one that I should have learned by now, that perhaps I should cage things in slightly less definite terms, because the buffalo did the exact opposite to what I was expecting. I crossed around to the dam, and they promptly changed direction and headed straight south, and the whole herd is moving in a very determined manner away from the dam. So it just goes to show there are no certainties out here. And it also makes life so interesting when you are living out in the bush and observing animal behavior, just to question why they've chosen to go this way, what is happening inside their heads that they've chosen to head off so determinedly. And I must say, in all credit to them, they've consistently moved in one standard direction, judging from their tracks that I picked up on the road. So they know where they're going. I just have no idea. And I would love to know what it is that has made them decide to go this way. So very interesting. Love to live a day in the life of the head of a buffalo. And I will tell you, I will confess, I have no idea why they've chosen to move this way. The whole herd is still around. We've got these guys on the road, but there's also quite a few moving through in the drainage line on my left-hand side. I can still see some heads poking through, moving through the drainage line. So there's lots and lots around. And I'm hoping that in a moment we'll be able to get to a nice open area and I can cut around them. At the moment, there's absolutely no way I can get across to the front. And while you guys were with Scott and Sindile, the buffalo also all moved off very, very rapidly. They all of a sudden ran across the road, and I don't know what triggered it or what prompted it. Maybe the wind is making them feel slightly unsettled, and one just got a bit of a fright, and then the rest of them followed behind. But it was a very sudden decision to move. Sorry guys, I'm just listening to the Game Drive channel quickly. Okay. And as you can see, that little bird that was on your screen a moment ago, the fork-tailed drongo, having a wonderful time following behind the buffalo. Catching all of the insects that get churned up as they move through the grass. And there's one buffalo up on the termite mound. Sorry guys, just getting rid of some grime on the screen. Buffalo moving up onto some of the termite mounds that are in this area, and I've seen quite a few of them doing that. And again, just for those of you who might be new to these drives, this is just a way of getting a little bit of extra nutrients, because the soil on termite mounds, the termites have actually brought up from deep underground, and it carries a very high mineral content. So it makes that vegetation on top there just a little bit more nutritious. And they're still on the move, so I'm going to try and stay with them. It is very, very windy now, so it's kicking up lots of dust into our faces as they come through. And it is that dry and dusty time of year. However, I'm not going to complain about the wind, because so far I have not had one single problem with a fly. Touch wood. I maybe shouldn't have said that. Tempting fate there. But so far, no fly problems, and you would expect to see lots and lots of flies around a buffalo herd like this, or of this size. So I'm thinking that maybe the wind is just keeping them away. You can see the oxpeckers sitting on the back there, and that one on the right is actually a juvenile oxpecker. It doesn't have the bright red beak of the adults. You can hear them crunching their way through the bush. It almost sounds like a herd of elephants that's coming through. They also don't always seem to take the easiest path. I've seen them bashing through quite a few bushes. Hello, little one. There are a couple of really sweet little calves off to my right, just immediately moving away. And I really would so love to know where these guys are off to and what they're factoring into their decision. The one in front is the one that's actually making that mooing sound. I'm not sure why exactly. It's not a young one, so not contact calling between calves and mothers, but maybe just communicating to the other members of the herd. Is quite an impressive sight. An entire herd of buffalo moving through Djuma Game Reserve. At least 100 or 200, probably even more. And all eating on the run. So there's no time to stop. They grab a couple of mouthfuls and then carry on. So very, very exciting morning. Really cool stuff to see such an enormous herd of buffalo moving through. I'm going to try and get a little bit ahead of them. The wind is really picking up now. I'm not sure what that means for our weather. Maybe the cold front coming in. And on my right, you can see what a road looks like when an entire breeding herd of buffalo. Ooh, sorry, Andrew. Comes through. Sorry. Not trying to throw Andrew off the back, I promise. Lots and lots of tracks going through. Might have heard me chatting a little bit about and using terms like drainage lines and cut lines. And Maggie M is one of our new viewers. Hi and welcome. It is great to have you aboard. And I really hope you are enjoying your time on these live safaris. Maggie M would like to know what I mean when I use terms like cut line and then a term like a drainage line. So for the cut line term, that's actually part of the road name, and probably that road name comes from an old barrier or an old edge of each property. So when I talk about our eastern cut line, our southern cut line, those are the boundaries of Djuma. And then when I was talking about Gari cut line a little bit earlier, that's actually just the road name, and it probably was, if we go back far enough in history, the boundary of a slightly smaller property within Djuma. So when I refer to cut lines, that is what I'm talking about. And then drainage lines. So drainage lines are part of the natural water movement process that happens throughout the rainy season. And after many years of water moving through a particular path in the same way that rivers are formed, you actually get these nice, steep, worn down areas that are very sandy, and they have thick vegetation. And at the height of the rainy season, they might also flow, almost like a river, but for the most part and for the most of the season, they are dry. But that is what I'm referring to when I talk about drainage lines. And when I go through one, possibly a little bit later, then I will show you what I mean. Beautiful places, nice thick vegetation, and a great place to look for lots of different animals, especially leopard. They do love to tuck themselves in there and hide away. But we've seen lots of animals moving through those drainage lines at the moment. And that's also because there's still moisture content from where the water flowed through under the soil. So it means that the nutritious quality of the vegetation there is just a little bit higher. And the wind's blowing straight into our face, so we're getting the full impact of the slightly foul smell of the buffalo combined with all of the dust that they're kicking up. The horns completely caused by either a growth defect, I can't fully see, or possibly cracked in a fight. So buffalo horns are actually made of bones, so they grow up from growth plates at the base of at the top of the skull, and they start developing very early on when the calf is a couple of months old. And they grow up into those enormous solid structures around as a protective layer on top of the head to protect the brain case. But if you do, as with people, if you do break or damage a bone, if it's not set correctly, then it can be snapped off completely or grow in a strange way. So some of the more regular viewers might have seen, for example, impalas with one horn, something along those lines, or maybe kudu with slightly odd-looking growth forms. That's the same deal. There's a bit of a skirmish between two of them. So as interesting as it is just watching where these buffalo are going, I would still like to be able to show you guys a front view of the herd as they move through, and to do that I need to just loop around and get to the other side of this drainage line. And Maggie M, fear not, I haven't forgotten. I will show you what it is I'm talking about. But while I reposition, I'm going to send you back across to Scott for an update on his side.
Well, not much has changed here, but it sounds like Jamie wants to get you some frontal views of this large herd of buffalo. I'm certainly looking forward to seeing them a little bit later. I think on the way back to camp we may swing past to get a view of them. Nothing much has changed here, and Sindile is still relaxing and enjoying his morning of leisure here. He has picked up his head once or twice, but only when the wind blows and all the leaves rustle. He just makes sure there's nothing approaching him. But even though he is fast asleep now, there's nothing saying that his mother won't return in the next 25 minutes with good news that she may have made a kill and she could take him back to that kill. That would be wonderful to see. And that's why we've decided to continue to stay here with him. You do need to invest time with these animals if you want to see the magical moments unfold, and seeing him and his mother reunite would certainly be one of those magical moments. I've only shared that with you once, and it was from a bit of a distance. We were following him as he headed towards her calls, and it was quite thick, so we couldn't quite keep up with him, but we did see them reunite and jump onto a fallen down marula tree and then continue off. That time actually she wasn't coming back to call him for a kill. She simply wanted to relocate her hunting area, and she would move him with her so that if she did make a kill she wouldn't have to travel too far to call him. Sean, is that you? I can hear around Triple M. Affirmative. You can, yeah, there's space for you here, so make your way. Okay, copy. I get confused with all the roads here. I don't know which property is which. Sorry, go again? No, he is fast asleep. So I was just chatting to Sean on the radio there, and I offered for him to come across here, which was a bit naughty of me. He's not allowed on this property, but we are allowed on Arathusa, and it was Sean and his tracker Reese who helped us find Sindile yesterday, so I was just trying to repay him, but I was only kidding, and that's why I said I get lost and I don't know which property is which. Earlier on I thought it might be worth us looping around and going and having a look for any sign of his mother and where she may be hunting, as that would be great to see a little bit of leopard hunting action. The last leopard kill we saw, and the only leopard kill I think we've actually seen, was made by Karula, and that was in December or January last year. It was actually the day after she lost her cub to hyena. We saw her catch and kill a tiny impala, but since then we have yet to see a successful leopard takedown. This guy got close to being our most recent kill, and he almost caught a dwarf mongoose. I thought he had it a few weeks ago on Arathusa. It was an incredible sequence of events that we got to see unfold. He was stalking these dwarf mongooses very intently, and the dwarf mongooses actually had no idea that he was there and walked towards him, and he was probably only 2 or 3 meters away when he pounced forward on towards them and scrambled after one of them, but didn't have any luck catching it before it disappeared down a hole. But as I did mention earlier, he was lucky earlier on in the week, and Jamie got to see him with a dwarf mongoose that he didn't really feed on. He chewed on it a bit like a toy, you could say, and then discarded it. The wind really is picking up now. Oh, nice big stretch. So Abel, who had joined us in the sighting, is now making as well, if that's the other vehicle you can hear. Now, it's difficult for us to give you a clear idea of how close we are to the animal sometime, and Donna has just asked, how far are we away from it? Now, I would say no more than 4 meters, and that's where I'm sitting, and I'm on the opposite side of the car. But if we were to lie down a regular door, which is about 2 meters in height, it would be, yeah, I'd say 1.5 to maybe 2 full doors. So about 4 meters maximum, incredibly close. Especially considering that he actually allowed us to drive up this close to him. It's one thing allowing animals to come up to you and lie down next to you, because then they are consciously making that decision, and it's a lot less intimidating for them to come up to you than it is for us in this very big vehicle to crash up alongside them. But even still, this naturally very shy and elusive animal has realized that there's no need to hide from us, because we don't cause any trouble for leopards, and it's important to say we also don't help them in any way. If we were to drive around tossing them impalas to feed on, it would create a unsustainable relationship between human and animal, and as soon as they begin to rely on us or associate us with food, it can become problematic. And it doesn't matter if it's a leopard you're talking about, a monkey, an antelope. It's very risky business to start feeding wild animals, and I would strongly urge people not to. Other than birds, I guess a bird feeder is okay, but even then you should feed birds in the correct manner and not have them coming into your house, because then they're going to start becoming a nuisance to you, and when animals become a nuisance to human, you may love the bird that comes into your house, but your neighbor may not, and that bird could end up being killed. Okay, well, from a frontal view of a young male leopard, you are going to get a frontal view of a massive herd of buffalo approaching Jamie. We will see you a bit later.
So guys, welcome back from a nice view of a leopard to a really nice view of a buffalo breeding herd. So while you guys were with Scott, I was desperately trying to figure out a way to loop around and get to the front of the herd so that we could see them approaching. However, every attempt that I've made, whenever I think that the buffalo have passed me and I've turned around to come back and loop around, has been met with another group of buffalo. So we were chatting a little bit earlier about the herd splitting, and this is generally how a big herd of buffalo might move through an area. So they will split into slightly smaller groups, and at the moment I've seen at least 3 different groups, and they're quite distinct. There's quite a bit of distance between them. So the 2 of them moved ahead of us, and then I thought I was done and I could loop around and get to the front, and I was met with a buffalo roadblock. So we are definitely not going to be leaving this area anytime soon. Oh, there's some action happening over there. I don't think the female is too receptive to that particular ill-practiced advance. She wasn't really having any of it, but I think the male was just trying his luck for a bit. But no success for him this morning. And mounting like that, what we just observed, can be obviously with its most obvious purpose, which is the mating process, but there are lots and lots of species of animal, including buffalo, that use mounting as a way of establishing dominance. So you will see it between some males of the species. The one more dominant might mount the younger one just to let it know and keep it in its place and to establish his hierarchy status. And I have actually once before seen a female buffalo mount a male, and now that was part of a very strange moment. They were all very strongly affected by the pregnancy of one of the females and the labor process, and they were a little bit frantic and caught up in the excitement. So I don't know exactly what went through her head, but some very unusual behavior from a female. These guys seem content for the moment to just stop here for a while, have a little bit to eat, but I'm sure that they will continue moving after that, the rest of the large herd. And I've been sitting trying to work it out in my head. I thought they were potentially going to twin dams, and they haven't. They've changed direction completely. They're now moving west, and I cannot work out where it is they're planning on going. Who knows, you might pick up a very large herd of buffalo on the Arathusa camera a bit later at that dam. But I'm going to stop trying to predict what these guys are doing. So I've said that I'm not going to offer any more information about where they're going, but Lisa would like to know where the buffalo are migrating to, and I have no idea. They have not gone where I expected to once this morning, so I'm not sure what's going through their heads. It might be that they are heading towards a nice grazing area that they know of. or maybe towards the Arethusa Dam for a drink when it gets a bit hotter. The sun has come out and is beating nice and strongly, but there is still a nip in the air, so they might not be too thirsty just yet, and they might have decided to move to the very large Arethusa Dam. Now, I know that, Lisa, when you asked that question, you asked where are they migrating to. This is not really a true migration. This is just them moving through the area and looking for a different place to settle down, whereas migration tends to happen in much larger numbers. So we think automatically of the Great Migration in East Africa. But this is not a true migration. It's not based on seasonal resources or certain breeding areas that the animals are moving to. So they're not migrating, they're just moving. And they're just moving in a way that I have absolutely no idea where they're going. But it will still be interesting to keep tabs on this buffalo herd, and hopefully they stay with us, or at least within our boundaries, because they are making a great deal of noise, and obviously a herd as large as this will carry a very strong scent. So I think that there is a possibility that the lions will catch wind of them and possibly follow on behind. We still haven't heard any reports, and I know there are lots of guys looking around for the Birmingham boys. An interesting question that's come through from Janet in Boston. And hi Janet, welcome to the Sunrise Safari. It's great to have you with us. And Janet would like to know if the animals react differently to male versus female human voices. And I'm sure a lot of you, while you've been out on drive with me, you'll have noticed that I do tend to just talk to the animals every now and again, especially with elephants who do pick up quite easily on tone. And to a degree, yes, I think they do. I always make sure that when I do talk to them, I try and lower the pitch slightly, because I have noticed that high-pitched frequencies that women tend to have, a slightly higher pitch to their voice, does have a slightly more unsettling effect on the animals, but it's not a huge noticeable difference. And in terms of deflecting charges, where you do have to shout and present yourself and make yourself look big and scary, and obviously I'm not the largest person in the world, I haven't noticed any major difference between working with male colleagues who've shouted at animals and when I've had to shout at animals who've been charging me, just in terms of deterring. It's more about the tone than anything else. So there's not a noticeable difference, but I do always try and lower the pitch. And it's just important to watch the kind of tone that you use. And I certainly haven't seen any great difference in terms of sitting with the animals on a vehicle and just talking about them. And there's one big bull observing us quietly. And I would put this guy probably at around 8 or 9 years old. You can see that very well developed boss. So that's the top of the base of the horns at the top of the head, that very, very thick section of bone, very solid, and a great weapon that the buffalo can use, both against each other and against various threats. So it's very common to see various animals of different species together, and we do actually, and I'll shift back slightly so you can see, but we've also got impala grazing or browsing around this area that the buffalo have moved through. And David from New Jersey would like to know if the different animal species recognize a different species by sight or by smell. And if it is by sight, does this mean that they know, or at least recognize or have an image of what they look like as an animal species? And that is a very interesting question. I would say predominantly the recognition is based on scent, just because the animals do have such a very strong sense of smell and they are so reliant upon it. But I also believe that there is a level of sight involved. So they grow up being used to moving around in a herd. So the babies will grow up with other buffalo and they get to recognize the look of what animal species they hang out with. Whether or not we can expand that to say that they know what they themselves look like might be a slightly different story. I'm not sure that they would recognize themselves in a mirror or anything like in the same way that dolphins can. But it is a very interesting question, and if you go really deeply into that, you start looking at the various ways that animals recognize themselves and are aware of themselves. And certainly with something like an elephant, they would definitely know what they look like and what they are. And I have heard rather than the reflection. So that's a very interesting insight. And what's the word I'm looking for? I think they just get used to growing up in a buffalo herd, and they recognize other species as different, mainly by smell. These guys have decided that they're not too bothered about being on the move. Here's that big male again. So guys, because I am so very curious about where this buffalo herd is moving off to, and I'm dying to see where the leaders of the group have headed to, I'm going to send you across to Scott, and I'm going to make my way around and just see what's happening on that side of things. So enjoy Sindile, and I'll be back with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. And he's moved ever so slightly into a bit more deeper shade, but look at this wonderful view we have of him. We've been incredibly spoiled with some great close-ups. Incredibly spoiled with some great close-ups. We are viewing, but it's certainly not behaving that way. Its parents and many generations of leopards have realized that humans are changing tact. Oh, he's going for it. Look at that. And humans are changing tact. Oh, he's going for it. Look at that. And what we need posing and performing for us, that's certainly not the case. And we're just getting spoiled here. Now, the good news is that this afternoon there's a strong likelihood that we will also be able to see him on the sunset safari. It'll be Team James out. Both Jamie and James are going to be presenting this evening's show. And just a reminder that it's our weekly fireside chat for the last half an hour of the broadcast this evening, where we will be showing you some of the highlights of the week. But before we do that, I'm guessing either Jamie or James will come into this area and try and relocate on Sindile. I'll probably also come out on tracking team. And because I have spent time here and know exactly where we're leaving him this morning, I'll probably head out then. So certainly some very good prospects for the sunset safari, and we always look forward to the fireside chat. It allows us to Again, like I say, show you some of the highlights of the week for those of you who missed out on that. And also just sit around a campfire and chat and answer some of your questions. So if you haven't tuned in yet to a fireside chat, it's something to look forward to. We won't only be chatting, there'll also be a little bit of song and potentially dance, because James is an incredibly talented musician and he'll be playing the guitar, and not sure what song he's playing yet. He was undecided. His that he's actually written for us to see some of his songwriting. His that he's actually written for us to see some of his songwriting. Anyway, it's time to say goodbye to Sindile, and it's been WildEarth Safari Hayes for introducing and it's time to say goodbye to Sindile, and it's been WildEarth Safari Hayes for introducing and Kirsty in the finals, and look forward to seeing all a little bit later around the campfire.
So guys, I did try and loop around, unfortunately was met with yet another buffalo roadblock, and the group that we were just with have decided now finally that they are going to move. So thank you as always to Andrew for his all of you pretty high. So guys, now finally that they are going to move. So thank you as always to Andrew for his all of you pretty high. So guys, definitely stuff that you would like to send through, then please do that in advance and we can start thinking about it and chat to you guys about spent with a big herd buffalo I have yet to see on the Sabi Sands, and very curious and interesting behavior. I'd love to know where they're off to, and I will be following up this afternoon. So for all of you,